Okay, in this section we're going to begin a discussion of how to manipulate the plot. We have previously gone into the plot in earlier lessons and taken a look at various plots, and you've seen me adjust it perhaps. But we're going to go into pretty much a line-by-line explanation of how to go ahead and manipulate this plot. We can start here by looking at the types of plot. Up here in the upper right, we can have a composite plot, a horizontal plot, a structure plot, and a vertical plot. A structure plot and a horizontal plot are essentially identical. A structure plot, if you magnify it enough, puts a little dot up there at the top of the plane view so that it looks like a slot head. Composite gives you two plots that are, one of them is a plain horizontal view plot and the other is a vertical section plot. And they're both independent. The kind of plot that you're currently looking at is identified by this plot type here that is in these two radio buttons. If I go to the left here, then all these numbers here for the ticks right here are going to be related to the TVD plot. And if I go over here, then these numbers are going to be related to the horizontal plot right here in this area. So the way this is set up, instead of saying that you have so many feet per inch, and because we're trying to optimize our usage on an 8.5 by 11 piece of paper or on an A4 piece of paper, we go ahead and select the plot that we want to work on, and then we can adjust the spacing. Now I can see in this vertical plot right here that I don't really have things lined out. I know that my plot's deeper than this, and I only have the depth down to 4,200 feet. So I can adjust the scaling here by hitting this and then changing it at 50 feet at a time. But then I notice that I have another problem here on this plot, and that is that I'm not really going much deeper than 30. So this line is drawn at 3,600 feet no matter what. So what's happened here is that earlier at some point I'd come in here and I'd set this to a manual setting. And I said that the maximum TVD is where this line is located, is set manually at 3,600 feet. But I don't really want to do that. I want to have it set in AutoCalc. And I apply that, and then the plot gets recalculated, and it looks at, comes up with a 9750 for me. So I say, okay, well that's better range for me right now. I'm going to put this at 500 feet spacing, and now I can see that I've got this down here looking much better. You know, I have 250 foot divisions along here at 20 ticks, and I come over to here. This plot is already pretty good. The number of ticks actually refers to the number of ticks down on the horizontal line. So if I say I have 15 ticks on this right here, then if you counted these ticks there would be 15. And over here the number of ticks refers to this right here. Now you might look at this and go, well, that's kind of goofy spacing that he has there. And every 250 feet, it starts out at 0, and then 250, and then 500. So I can look at that and go, well, okay, I don't like that either. So I'm going to come over here to my set origins, and I'm going to go to my manual settings, and I'm going to set my maximum depth at 10,000 feet. I'm going to apply that. And by doing that, I have a more rational number spacing on my curve here. And I also notice that I don't have any zero up here, so I have this red handle here, and I can pull this down like so, and I can see my zero there. So by clicking on these different areas, I can come in and adjust the ticks and the spacing for the plots that I want to have. Say I want to change my vertical section. My vertical section plane here is currently set to 0, which is not my vertical section plane. Obviously my vertical section plane is 45 to 55 degrees, depending on what angle I want to look at it at. And I'm going to put 45 in here, and then the vertical section plane has been changed, and I have a much better view of the curves that I have in there. Now, if I want to change the grid and how fine the grid looks, I normally want to do this for a plot. I can go to no grid, I can go to coarse grid, or I can go to fine grid. And that's noticeable when I print, but it's not, it's kind of noisy on the screen, so I normally just keep mine on a coarse grid. And you can do the same thing by clicking in the plane plot, the plan plot, and you can go to fine there if you want to. But again, I prefer the coarse grid, and so we'll keep that there. Now here in the header information is the box where we can select what we want to have up in this area of the screen right here. I can go to the declination, I can have grid, date, I'll just turn everything on and go done. And you can see not only have filled up the header, but I now have a frame around, and down here there's some other information that we can't see that we can only see when it's going to be printed. So now what we're going to do is we will explore how you can adjust your labels on the plot. And what we do here is we go to this button and click on this, and it brings up this label dialog box here where we can adjust either the labels on our horizontal plot or on our vertical plot. The first thing we need to do is to select this comment box, and this comment box turns on whether or not we want comments. Now, we won't be able to see our comments displayed until we go to the curve button over here and turn on the whether or not we want to see comments displayed for any particular curve. And when we do that, we can see the comments. But what we're going to do here right now is we are going to leave here and come over here to this curve button, and I have all the different curves in here that can be turned on and turned off. On the left hand side there is a checkbox as to whether or not we want to see that curve or not. So I can click this, and for example I'm going to turn off the red curve that you see over here, and I'm going to come here and I'm going to turn that off, and I'm going to go back to this curve and I'm going to turn it back on. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn on the comments. The second box in these rows along these curve numbers here are related to whether or not we want to see the comments that may or may not be associated with that curve. And I'm going to turn this one on, and I'm going to go done. And you will see that the comments are now displayed. And this is a proposal curve that we have generated here. And earlier I went into the curve and I typed in these comments here for each part of the critical points here, and then I can see them here. And I can come here to my label editor, and it can tell me whether I want what kind of labels I want to see. I can also adjust the curves spacing, the spacing that I can have. Let's say I want to see every 50th or every 5th. I've set this to 5 right here. I want to see every 5th inclination, so I can do that, and it will go through and it will show me the inclination for each one of those, every 5th inclination. I have these areas down here where I can turn these on and off if I want to see I have a line from the survey to the point. The background colors if I don't want to have backgrounds, and then I can apply. And if I don't want to have lines, I can apply so I don't have lines. You can see the lines disappear. I can change the foreground colors to different colors. I can, for example, here I have the colors that I want to have here. If I wanted to have a background color that's different than that color there, I wanted to say have it in black, I could do that. And I apply that, and now I can see that in black. And if I wanted to change the foreground color, here I can say it's the selected color, and I'm going to make it white, and then I'm going to apply that. And then we can see that our labels are, we have a lot of variation there as to what we can do with our labels. Now we're going to move on to a different area here, and I've already explained the curves here, so I'm going to move right here to the zooming. And the zooming is a nice feature to have, and you'll see some neat things here. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to select the box that I want to zoom on. I turn my zoom on here, and then I use my cursor to create a box in the area that I want to see. Now, it's a good idea, in fact it's sometimes kind of necessary, to make a box that has the same general form as your screen, the aspect ratio. So my screen that I'm looking at here is almost square, and so I'm making a screen that's almost square, and so when I do that I'll get a good portrayal of the area that I'm zooming on. Now there's some features in this that are kind of neat. If you look up here in this caption area, up as I move the cursor around here, you can see that the coordinate is changing, so it's telling me what coordinate that I'm currently located on. Now if I take the left mouse button and I come down here and I say take a point, I don't really have a good point to choose here for my survey point, but as an illustration I'm going to just illustrate this. If I press down and I move my cursor away, keeping the left mouse button down, I look up here, I can see my distance and the direction that I am pointed. So this is like an electronic string compass that you have here, if you're looking at those numbers up in the upper left hand corner. Now if I come over here to this other plot here, and I'll turn my zoom off and turn it back on to reinitialize it, and this time I'm going to make a box around this area up here where my survey is, and I can get up here and I can see that I have my black line coming down there is actually the survey line that I have. And this time when I make a straight line, if you look up in the upper left hand corner, you will see that it is telling me not only distance, but it is telling me the inclination. So if you're a directional driller who just absolutely has to work with the string compass all the time, then this is an electronic version that you may learn to enjoy. If you want to go to again, to refresh on that, if I want to come over and work on this plot, I click on this and I kind of initialize the zoom, and then I make a box in the form of the screen and it zooms in on it. So it takes a little bit of getting used to. I'll give you an example of what happens if you make a box that's in the wrong shape. Okay, I'll make a box like this, for example, which is much narrower and longer. And it came out okay, but sometimes, let's try it the other way. Let's try it this way, see what happens. Yeah, it still came out okay. Sometimes it just gets flaky. But the best thing to do is just make it in the general shape and you get exactly what you're looking at. Okay, now we're going to discuss printing. In order to print a plot, you select the print button here and it brings up the dialog box that you see here. And all you should ever do is look at it and verify that the printer that you have selected is a printer that you want, and then click OK, and it should be sent off to the printer. If you try and adjust the properties of your printer from this screen, it is a hit and miss proposition, unfortunately, and it has to do with the I should say the bugs that are inherent in the dialogue of this generation of software. The best, most effective way to change the properties of your printer, or to change your printer, is to do the following. You close out your program completely, go back to the window. To adjust the printer properties for Windows, the easiest way is to go to the Start button, and depending on which operating system you're running or how your screen looks, you select printers and faxes. Your screen may look somewhat different because it may be set up different, but you select printers and faxes, and you should have a dialog box that looks very similar to this, that has all of your printers associated with it. And that printer that you would want to use, in this case I want to set this printer as my default, so I right click, and the second option down should say set as default printer. And if I want to change a property, like I want it to go to landscape, then I would come over here and I would go to properties, and I would hunt around for where the landscape is, and in this case this is set to landscape. I want it set to portrait maybe instead, because I'm going to print a portrait plot, and I go apply, and then I go OK, OK, and I have set that up. Now there's one more thing to go and discuss here, and that's the use of a PDF file that you can generate using WinServe. WinServe does not have any preview, and it doesn't have any ability to export a program, a plot or an output directly to a PDF file as WinServe 2 does. So you can use a PDF generator. Now in my experience and the experience of most of the users, the Adobe Writer does not work reliably, and it often hangs up WinServe when you're trying to export a plot into a PDF file. But that doesn't mean game's over. There is a very inexpensive alternative to it at a website called Software 995, and I am going to go to that website right now and tell you what you need to do in order to get this driver. We are going to migrate over to here in this website, and we're going to www.software995.com, and we see this website come up, and on this website they have something called PDF 995. So I click on PDF 995. You should see this page. You go over to here and you see download now, and there's two programs here that you need to download. One of them is the converter, and one of them is the printer driver. And this is shareware, and the name of this software 995 refers to the idea that if you don't want to be nagged every time you run it, you pay them $9.95 and you get a key, and you won't get the nagging screen. I find this to be the most reliable of the 995 generators. There are some other ones out there, and if they work for you, that's fine. You don't have to use this one. It's just one that I most commonly use. I've downloaded that one here, and I'm going to download the other one, and I download both of these here. It just takes a few seconds to get them to download. And I'm done there. And so then I would come back to the install here on my screen. I downloaded these files directly to my desktop here, so I'm going to run them both and get them installed, because I don't have them installed on this computer. This is a new computer that I'm using here. And it comes up and it says, in order to complete installation you need to install the free converter. Okay, if you have not downloaded it, you can download it free. Okay, well I thought that was nice of them to tell me that, but I already knew that, so I already downloaded it, and I accept their agreement, and I now have it installed. So when I come over here to my printers and faxes, I now have a PDF 995 on here, and I'm going to set that up as my default printer instead of this one over here. And now I'm going to actually have something that is going to allow me to preview my output. So now I'm going to go back and run WinServe yet again, and we're going to start generating our output to a PDF file. And WinServe runs, comes up, and I'm going to generate a plot here, and I'm back to my plot screen. I'm going to go to print. You can see that I'm set up for my PDF 995. I go OK, and it comes and it asks me what I want to name my file, and I tell it that I'm going to call it WinServe, and I go save, and you can see the message that I get here, and continue using the sponsored version, and it's going to annoy me or you until I close it out. But in the background it has created a PDF file, and I have a logo that's been inserted up there, and you can see the plot that gets generated here. It's a pretty decent looking plot. It's not the You know, it's not a super fancy plot, but it is a good field plot. And it has created the PDF file, and it has put it in the Adobe Reader. Now, one thing I would like to also mention here, notice that it says Adobe Reader. You do need to have the Adobe Reader installed on your computer, and if you don't have the Adobe Reader installed on your computer, go ahead and download it. It's a free download from Adobe. Go to adobe.com and download it. Now, if I wanted to generate this plot in landscape, then I could select the landscape button here, and now I need to generate a plot in landscape. But let's see what happens here when I try and do that here with this Adobe thing. Remember, I told you that this does not work really reliably in terms of, it says it's set up in landscape, everything looks good, but now we're going to try and print it in landscape, and we're going to see what happens. And I'm going to, it tells me I already have a file named that. And again, I get the annoying thing, and you see that I, in fact, behind this, all this noise that these guys are giving me, I have a landscape on a portrait. So maybe sometimes if I go and I do it again, it's going to generate it properly. And this time it did. Sometimes you have to do it twice. Sometimes doing it twice doesn't do it. Sometimes you have to actually go back and set the printer up so that it'll do it. It's a bit of an annoyance, but once it's set up, initially it'll continue to operate effectively for you. Now we're going to discuss a couple more features of the plot screen here, and then we're going to move on to generating a report of the surveys themselves. You'll notice that you have this tracking box here, and you turn that on, and it turns on a thing up here. What this does is, as you move your mouse around, it shows you the survey, an interpolated survey that you have, and if you want to see least distances or distances that you are from something, from that curve to other curves, you can turn this on as well, and it displays an information box up there. You can turn on your high side, and you can turn it, you say if I wanted to see a 100-foot radius of where I was, then I have this little circle that's drawn, and if something falls within that circle, then it will it'll display that distance for me. It's kind of a neat toy. It may have some wowee functionality to it if you're trying to illustrate to somebody how far away you are at things, but there are other better, more accurate ways to do it with a button that we will discuss in a while, the normal button. I'm going to go done, and we're going to move on to the reports over here on the main screen, and that's where we generate our plot report. And I'm going to come over to here, and first thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to change this logo to my company logo. There's another company. I'm Performance Drilling Technology, but I do have a company that's called Performance something or other, Wireline, I think, and they use this software, but I'm going to put my logo in there instead. And you should, that's how you, once that's in there, you don't have to change it. The other thing you may want to change is this up here. You may see Performance Drilling in there, or Scientific Drilling, or whoever it just happens to be on that. But then you make that a default, and it will stay. This explanation here of how to make this header in your report is clearly explains, but if I wanted to say extend this by having another line below Performance Drilling and say this is a report by, and then I put another backslash there like that, and then I would say my name, and then I would put another backslash there like so, and then you'll see that when we print a report how that is formatted out in the report. This allows you, in these available fields here, allows you to choose the fields that you want to have on your report, and the fields in the report are the ones here. And this is, you can save templates and get templates of the arrangements that you have here. If I want to take something back, for example, I would choose this and true vertical depth, and I would take it back. If I wanted to put true vertical depth in above this point right here, then I would choose this and I'd go insert, and it does it. So it's pretty, you can play around with this and learn pretty quickly how it works, and it will do that for you. And when you want this to be a default template, you just go make default, and this information and the header information and the fields report will all be saved as part of that report format. And then you can simply go ahead and print, and we're going to go to our annoying little PDF generator here so that we can see what we're doing here. And I haven't paid them their pound of flesh yet, or a little $9.95 of flesh at any rate. And so I can see my report printed out there with my logo up in the left-hand corner. And if I want to print just the last survey page of a long list of surveys, I can do that. Let's say I've got a lot of surveys over here, probably more than a couple. Let's say I wanted to print the last page of that. I'm going to print the last survey page of that, and as is often the case out in the field, you don't need to print out all of your surveys. You just want to print out the last day's worth of surveys. And you can see that in this case I chose something here, which the last page of a long list of surveys in my proposal. You can change the curve obviously by selecting this. And if you want to print a list from a particular survey, you can select that, and then you can come over to here and say, if I want to print everything from that depth on, I select that and I print. You just have to remember to make sure that you select all next time and to reinitialize it when you start printing later on. And if you just want to print a report of your critical points on a curve, you can do that by selecting this, and it will print out all the points that have comments, as you can see behind here. After this thing goes away here, you can see that this is printed here. If you want to do interpolated reports, then you can come over here and turn this on, and you can interpolate either by measured depth or by TVD, and you can increment by some amount that you want. Let's say I want to print every 25 feet here. I put in 25 feet there, and then I'd go print, and it'd go yes, and it puts it all, and I'll do that again, print, and it says you can generate a list of interpolated surveys without generating a report. In either case, the surveys are stored in curve 21. Did you just want to generate the interpolated data? The first time I said yes, and all that data went over into curve 25. This time I'll say no, and I actually want it to display to me on a PDF file. Again, I get this, and you can see that every 25 feet back here I have a list of surveys here that are for every 20 interpolated for me. I turn that off, and then I won't get any interpolation. Now, one thing that will occasionally backfire on you here is if you come here and you turn on this mining mode. Now, if you've turned on this mining mode, what you're going to see is your inclinations are all going to be negative, and it's going to freak you out. And the numbers are calculated correctly except for that inclination. It's because in the mining industry, in certain instances, their inclinations are 90 degrees away from what the inclinations are that we use in oil field drilling. The other thing that you have over here is these check boxes for box comments and including projections to bit and show projection to TVD. And as a general rule, don't ever have these things checked in here. If you need to have a projection to the bit, just add it in by hand. And show projection to DVD. These things cause more headaches than they're worth, and they can actually keep the report from being printed properly. So just make sure that you have your box comments turned on if that's in fact what you want. Box comments really is a standard feature that you should have. But these have, over the years, created more problems than they're worth, and I suggest that you keep them turned off. One more important feature here is this ASCII file generator, and what this will allow us to do is to be able to generate an ASCII file that your customer may want to have for their purposes of importing it into Excel spreadsheets or into some geological program that they have. And you can arrange the ASCII files that you want the information according to this template here. So you could have some special ASCII template which would give a geological program just the true depth, the north, south, and the east, west coordinate in the order that they wanted to have it, or any set of information you want. You simply select the ASCII button, and it will ask you to type in a file name, and again, you're limited by that 8.3 stuff, and it'll ask you if you want a full report. And if you want a full report, then what it does is it gives you this style of report. It goes ahead and it runs the notepad automatically, and it gives you a facsimile of what you would get on a regular report, except in this limited 1980s style text format. If you want to go ahead and just print columns of numbers, then you would print this ASCII and you file, and you would answer that question a little differently here. Do you want a full report? You go no, and then you get just the columns of data that are organized in that fashion that you have them there. So that's a useful feature for giving people data in other formats. Now we're finished with this, and we are going to discuss some other reports that are available here. And you have a target projection report, and this target projection report's quite a nice little report actually, and I'm just going to go ahead and print it for you and we'll discuss it. Yes. Do you want to replace it? Yes. And then what we have is this report here. Now, this report is organized in such a way that it shows you the current target that you are aimed at, and it has the orientation of the target the way you have it, and it has the target information, what the target number 1 is, how big it is, and the projection point from where the projection is being made, and then it has 3 different methods of projection that are shown. The protractor method, which is the age-old method that's used by directional drillers with a compass and string. Minimum BLS, which is telling you what the minimum curvature is to get to each one of those points. And then the DLS method of projection that uses the last projection value that you were using in your projections, which was 3 in this case, to each one of those corners. So it's a very useful little report to print out and to give a company man or somebody who's curious about what the parameters are that we're going to have when we get to the various, from where we are to some various points around a target.